All right, I think we'll get going. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for staying for a later session on a Tuesday night. Is everyone's brain full already? I know mine is getting there. We're going to be going through some best practices and some things around closing your books at a month end or period end or year end. My name is Christy Weekly. I'm a program manager based out of Fargo. Yes, I have an accent. I sound Canadian, right? I'll say A every once in a while. And I focus basically on the general ledger modules, and I also just took over what you guys refer to as management reporter, or what we now call financial reporting. So a lot of what we're going to go through today really focuses on mainly general ledger features that we introduced to really make the closing process easier for you as customers and as partners. We will touch on a few little things in fixed assets and accounts payable. But most of what you're going to see is going to be in general ledger, since that really was the focus that we had in the fall release. So before we start, just a quick show of hands. How many are partners in the room? So quite a few, and the rest, I'm assuming, are customers. Okay. How much experience does everyone have with like basic 7.0? I'll even call it AX. Anyone? A little bit? Zero? Some? None? Maybe a hand of none. Would that be good? Yeah. Okay. So feel free to stop and ask me questions. I'll take questions throughout the demo. I should have a pretty good time to go into a little bit more depth. A lot of times we'll cover some credit and collection stuff at the same time, but we don't have that today. So we'll have a little bit more time. And, of course, at the end we'll have time for questions. So our agenda today is really to talk about two primary focuses. One, of course, is the Financial Period Close Workspace itself. This was introduced with AX7, and hopefully some of you have seen this. And the next focus we're going to look at is a lot of the enhancements that we made around periodic processes to make them multi-company, really to help speed up your end of year or end of period processes. That's probably one of the biggest complaints that we had heard in the past, is that I've got 100 companies, and you mean I have to go into all 100 and do a year-end close? That's ridiculous. So really what we focused on, and again, mainly in general ledger, with the fall release, so 7.1, is to make a lot of these processes that you do at period end what we'll call multi-company. So we'll go through a lot of that. So I got one last slide, and the rest of the time is going to be demo. So we're going to start with the Financial Period Close Workspace, and then we'll go through some intercompany setup, some depreciation, some adjusting entries. We'll actually do through some journals. We'll talk a little bit about some allocation processes, foreign currency revaluation, putting your periods on hold, year-end close. We'll chat about financial reporting a little bit. And the last thing I'll do is actually I'll show you a little bit of a brief overview of the CFO workspace that will be embedded with the upcoming release. And you guys can give feedback on that if you have suggestions. So with that, like I said, we're just going to jump right to the demo. And hopefully the machines are all refreshed and ready to go. I'm just going to refresh this just to make sure. Okay. So first place we're going to start is the Financial Period Close Workspace. Like I was saying, this was introduced with AX7, and really what this allows you to do is to define your tasks that you complete as an organization. So a lot of times if you think about what happens at a month end or a quarter end or year end, a lot of the customers that we would talk to, they have a nice little Excel spreadsheet with all of their tasks that they have to complete. And a lot of times it was a very painful thing to keep track of the status of where each legal entity or each department was at with those tasks. So what we've done is we've actually built that all into the system into a completely configurable workspace that is defined by you as the end user. So you can see here some things that we have on the side. Is I'm currently looking at a month-end task schedule that I've created. And this will give us basic KPI information, such as the number of past due tasks, the tasks that are remaining to be completed today, tasks that are blocked, all the remaining tasks that we have. And then in the middle, we have a lot of lists that give us overviews or different slices of this data. I'm actually going to start at the bottom here. This task list gives us the complete overview of all the tasks that have to be completed. And you can see here, and of course these are all past due because I'm back in 2015, but you can ignore that for right now. These are all the tasks that have to be completed. You can see here we have them organized by module, but this was completely defined by me within my organization. You can organize it any way you'd like. So if your AR and your AP teams have maybe the same manager, you could actually put those together under a focus area. So they're completely defined by the end user. You can see here also we have some different icons, and I'll actually scroll down here. You can see some of these have padlocks. What that means is that these tasks are dependent on a task above it. So I can't complete this task until a previous task has been marked as completed in the system. So we have a lot of different filtering options here. So let's say that I want to see just the tasks for my USMF company. I can filter that down. Let's say I also want to see just the tasks that are past due for USMF. I can filter that down. Of course, it's all of them for this data. But we have a lot of different filters that are available. If I go back here, a lot of these other task lists that we have are also just predefined filters that we created. So for example, if you wanted to look, again, by company, you could use this and look across the company. It shows a basic KPI to give you the percentage complete. Of course, if I want to see more detail, I can just click on it, and it will show me the list of the tasks that correspond to that KPI that I'm interested in. Yeah, question? I'm actually going to show you that in just a second. So the question is, where do I add these tasks? So I'm actually jumping ahead of the setup for just a second to kind of show you what you can do with the schedule. Another one, by person. So if, let's say, April, who is our accounting manager, has a lot of tasks assigned to her, you can go and see April's status. So we have a lot of different filters and views on all of this. Yeah, question?
Is there any way you can attach documents?
Sure. Yep. The question is, can you attach documents? Yes, you can attach documents. One thing I'll point out, too, when it was first introduced, we could attach a document to the actual period close schedule. So what that means is you could attach your evidence to say, you know, this is what was completed in the month end for March. We also added in 7.1, the fall release, documentation that can be added to the task itself, which is like how-to documentation. So if you want to put, you know, some kind of Word document or even a task guide, you can even attach a task guide to that so that your users, if they're new, and you maybe want to help them, you know, how do I complete this task? You can also attach that. So you can see here, it's a little bit, the columns are a little small, but right here is template attachments. These are the how-to documents, and right here is attachments, which are the evidence of the task that you just completed. I think there was a question in the back, too. Yeah, so the question is, can you create these based on the year-end close or month-end close? Yes, it's completely defined by you, and I'll actually show you how to do that. All right, so let's actually jump into that. So the links that we have at the end here, here is our configuration tool. And I'm actually going to start kind of at the bottom and work my way up. So the first thing we have are closing roles. So these are roles that you define as part of your period end for any role that might actually complete these tasks. We don't actually read the roles from security, and the reason we don't do that is because we designed this to be a very generic checklist framework. So what that means is we really would like people to use it for additional things beyond just the financial period close. So you can come in here and define your roles. The next step is to define the resources. So here we do read the employees that exist within operations. And all you're simply doing here is you are mapping that employee with the corresponding role that they play in the corresponding legal entity. So here you can see Arnie corresponds to an AR invoicing clerk and a payment clerk in these companies that are listed. Next, we'll jump up to the task area. Like I was saying earlier, These are completely defined by you. We created the sample data using modules, but you can do any combination based on the setup of your organization. Calendars is next. Calendars is really used to say, what days do we work? Typically, you can see here I have it set up for a 5-day working week, so Monday through Friday. But you can actually go in and make edits and say, maybe on a specific week at the end of the year, yes, we do ask you to work on a Saturday. So what you can do is you can come in here and change specific dates to say that, yes, this is a working day, or no, it's not a working day for holidays, for example. Question? So the question is really around workflow and integration to a calendar. We've actually discussed a lot of those internally, and we kind of stepped back and we really thought about workflow a little bit, and really we have to ask, what is the workflow? A lot of times the workflow is around the task itself. So a lot of times what the user will do, like if I'm April, I'll go into my workspace and I'll see my tasks. And the workflow is really around the fact that I need to post my AP invoices. And those might have to go through a workflow approval. So there's not workflow built into the task list itself, but the tasks that are on the list, if that makes sense. The other thing is we actually did a lot of research around integration to Outlook. And we actually were going down that path. And kind of what we got is customers decided really they didn't want that. And the reason being is that they wanted to see everything in one place. And if we added things in Outlook, now suddenly they were having reminders in Outlook, but then they were having to come into operations to do it. So we were really trying to organize it so everything could be done and seen for due dates and the time that things were due from one screen for the user. Of course, we're always open to suggestions because we still kind of question, is that something we should add or not? So yeah, there's definitely things we can do to enhance.
You mentioned earlier that wanting to use it besides period end close.
Sure.
So what did you mean by that?
The question is, what about using this, my comment about extending this and using it beyond period end close. What did I mean by that? We actually had a customer we demoed this to, and they're like, my IT team can actually use this. And they used it as like a project scheduler. So what they would do is they actually were thinking they could create schedules for their IT team for each task that they had to complete, maybe when a new employee came on and they had to configure their laptop or whatever it might be. So it's not a period end close thing. But again, it's some kind of checklist that had to be completed by someone in the organization.
So is there, I don't see it, but is there a view to go put Gantt charts or something like that into it, make it more like project?
Yeah, the question is, what about like Gantt charts, KPIs? We don't have any right now, but this is something, again, a lot of you have probably seen a lot of the embedded analytics that we're starting to introduce. That is something that we'll be adding, yes. So a lot of these workspaces will get KPIs added, they'll get analytics added. A lot of times, I can't remember who was up here earlier, was talking about being able to see how long did it actually take from start to finish of a task to actually be able to track how long it took, and is there something we can do to shorten that time? Yep.
So on the dependency, so if the task is dependent on the previous task being completed, there's no notification to that next person to say that task is completed, start yours?
So the question is around the dependencies. Is there any type of notification that says, hey, employee A finished that dependent task and you can now start it? We don't have notifications built in yet. This would be a great scenario for Flow, though. For those of you who have seen Flow, great scenario for Flow, actually. Okay, let's keep going on the setup. So here are the tasks themselves. So we really have the two hearts or components, main components that we have are tasks and closing schedules. So the task is really, think of it like the generic checklist. This is the generic list of all the tasks that I have to do. And you can see I have this for month end. because I created it as month end. I can create it any way I want, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So these are all the tasks that I have. You can see here I have another one that we're actually going to walk through called year end. This is definitely not exhaustive of everything you would do at a year end, but this is the demo that we'll go through. So to create a new template, you simply have to add one. So let's say I want one for quarter end. We can create it. Now here I have a blank task list. So what do I typically do at quarter end? Now the second new feature I'm going to quickly show you is really around using Excel to be able to populate these tasks. This can be a little tedious, right? And a lot of times my quarter end tasks overlap a lot with my month end tasks or my year end tasks. So what we can do is we can export this to Excel. So up here we have our Excel integration. And I actually already did this just to make sure my login worked. So you can see here we're basically dumping everything out. And all I have to do if I want to create a new task is go down to the bottom. And I'm going to add a new one. And we'd call that new one quarter end. And this is task number 50. And a lot of this, what I do is I simply copy paste. So let's say that I also process allocations. I'm just going to copy all the data, paste it in. All right, looks good. Publish it. It's successful. So now if we go back into the system, and we will look at our quarter end, there's the task that I just created. So really the Excel add-in, opening this in Excel is really powerful because you can actually just get a demo data version of that Excel file, copy paste it, change your companies, change the names of your employees, publish it back in, and you can literally have it set up within a couple minutes. And that's actually what I did for the year-end task list. I just copied all of the things that were relevant that I wanted to show, published it back in. I was done within 2 minutes. Okay, so this is our task list, completely user-definable. Some important things to kind of look at. Again, here's the area that we talked about. So you can map it to say this task is typically done by someone in accounts payable. And remember what the system will do then is those resources are mapped to accounts payable to the legal entity. So when the actual schedule comes for the month end, the system automatically assigns this task to the person in accounts payable for the legal entity that I'm creating it for. So that's how we do all of the mapping. Here's just the name of the task, the due date relative to the start of the task. So for example, if I want to start this year end on, let's say, 12/31, I can say that this task really should be done on a -1. So what that means is it should be completed on 12/30, 1 day before the start date of my period end process. So this due date relativity, of course, we're not hard coding a specific date. We're just saying, as of the date I'm starting this process, should it be a couple days before? 0 means on the day of the task that's starting, or 1 or 2 days or 3 days after. The time it's due. Again, here's the role that automatically was assigned. The company that I'm running this for. And the task list. So right here what we're doing, we have a couple different options here. You can actually relate this to a specific menu item within operations, or you can actually even have it go out to a specific URL. So for example, if one of your tasks is to update your exchange rates or something like that, you can have it go out to a Wanda or some other site and pump that information into the system through a URL. The nice thing with the menu items is we actually did build the menu structure into this dropdown, which was a huge task in and of itself. You don't have this in Excel. I'll warn you of that right now. So if you do this in Excel, you're not going to have this nice little tree. You actually have to know the AOT name of the menu item. Yes, it's kind of a pain in the bottom. I'm talking to my kids here when I say bottom. So what you can do, though, again, send it out to Excel using a pre-existing one. Copy that AOT name, paste it in, and you're ready to go. Question?
Generic task that's not tied to a module, or let's just say you want to put up there and say, hey, 4 days before the end of the month, I
Yeah, just leave it blank. Yep, just leave it blank. Question?
What about customized forms?
Customized forms. So being able to link to them, as long as it's a menu item in the AOT,
I find it there.
you'll find it here. It's a menu item. So as long as you can access it through our menu structure, you should be able to see it in here. Yep. Here's where we can define our dependencies. So if there is a dependency, we can mark it as such. And our buttons are a little hidden here, but here's where you can set the dependency. So if I can't complete this until my general journal adjustments are completed or something like that, you can just go in and set the dependency on the next task. All right, and right here is our little attachment that we talked about. This is the how-to documentation. Because remember, at the template level, we're at the generic task where it's not specifically assigned yet, right? Okay, last thing we have in the setup is the schedule itself. So I've actually already run through this just to save a little time. You can see that I created one for year end. And I'll just kind of show you, I can quick run through the basic steps. So when it comes to the year end close, you can come in here and give the schedule a name. So maybe it's year end close for 2016. You can put that in. You can define the description, the start and end date for when you actually want to complete the period close. And then remember, it uses those relative due dates, using that end date to define the due date and the time. And then the template itself. So here's where you can say, well, this is a month end, quarter end, or year end, and this is where it's going to choose the tasks that we had created earlier. And then the last thing is just the companies that it's going to be created for. So pretty easy to create the schedule. Once your schedule is created, let's actually jump back to the Financial Period Close Workspace. So we kind of went a little backwards, right? We looked at the schedule first to see what you see in the workspace. So let's actually switch. I'm going to pick that year-end close schedule that I created. Again, you can see a lot of things are past due because we're looking at 2015 data, but let's take a look at our task list. So we can see all the things we're going to run through. Before I start going through this list, is there any other questions on the workspace before we keep going? Yeah, great question. Can you add a one-time task? Absolutely, yes. Once the schedule is created in here, you can see here I can add a task, I can remove a task, you can edit a task. So maybe this month I'm going to switch the due date or the time. I can make edits to that. And all of these changes are just a one-time change to just this schedule. It never changes the existing template that you've created with the tasks on it. Yep, great question. Question?
The schedule itself, is it possible through security somehow to say that only, for example, the controller has access to setting the schedule and changing the schedule?
Yeah, that's a great question. What about security? And actually, there's one thing I was thinking I should mention. I'm logged in as the administrator. The administrator or the accounting manager, there are specific roles defined for certain roles or specific duties for certain roles that have full access. So you can see as the accounting manager or as an admin, I see all of this overview about the status of different people or different organizations. Now, if I would actually log in as April would see one thing, just her task list. April does not have visibility into anyone else's tasks. She doesn't have visibility to any legal entities that she doesn't have access to. So it is completely adhering to the security that we've defined for April role. So it's going to show different data depending on whether you're more of the accounting manager or the actual user or the person actually completing the task.
But then that person wouldn't know if the predecessor task has been completed.
Yep, so the question is, well, what if there is a dependency? How do they know? So remember we had the padlock. I don't have any dependencies on this one. The padlock would go away. It's not ideal, right? I mean, she'd have to constantly be refreshing and checking the workspace. That's why I was saying a thing through flow would actually be ideal because you could actually just have that flow kick off as soon as a task is completed and just send an email. Flow is actually really cool. Yeah.
Christy, can you tie this to like your fiscal calendars or your
Automatically. Yeah, so I think the question is more of like, is there a way to automatically have the schedules created based on your calendar for quarter end, period end? We don't today. That's a great suggestion. Yeah, it's not automated today. You have to go in and create the schedule using the configuration. I think there's one more question back.
So, from a controller's perspective, let's say you're trying to, as one of the tasks of the month-end process is reconcile 5 bank accounts. Is there a way for them to see, okay, how many, two or three of the 5 accounts are reconciled? Is there a way to see that?
Sure. So kind of the question is, let's say that I have 5 bank accounts and I need to reconcile all 5 of them. Is there a way for me as the accounting manager or the controller to have visibility into the status of all 5 of those? Yeah, you could, because you could actually create 5 tasks for all 5 bank accounts. You could do it that way. But if you're really just creating one task and there's multiple bank accounts behind that one task, we don't have visibility into that. One of the things that we really wrestled with a lot when we were creating this is things like, how can I automatically update the status? Or how can I automatically mark something as complete? That's really hard to know, because just because I click on a link to open a form doesn't mean I actually did anything on that form. So that's some things we need to actually work on a little bit, is to try to add intelligence around completion of those tasks, or maybe even add a way, temporarily for the user in those forms that are actually linked to say completed, and it would automatically update the schedule. But those are, great suggestions and things we know we need to get added in.
For the month end, would we see one for January, February, March, April?
Yeah, so if you do a month-end schedule in this drop-down here, you would see one for each month.
Okay.
Yep, because you have a separate schedule for each one. Have we seen clients attaching work paper?
Trying to put all their work papers.
Um,
Are they not using it that way?
Yeah, that's the documentation. Yes, I mean, we have had customers do that. I don't know to what extent, though. I don't know what you mean when you say all. Financial statements also, it's...
I think I have one in treasury. I have someone doing 15 bank recs. She would attach all 15 every month.
Sure.
So.
Yep. Question?
Is it possible to integrate this task with my office calendar?
The question again, is there a way to integrate this to your office calendar? Not today. So that kind of gets back to the question earlier where we wanted to add that, but customers kind of came back and said, but then I'm jumping between Outlook and this task list, and they really wanted to just stay on the task list. But something, we're going to keep, getting feedback from customers. I mean, this is pretty new, right? So if we continually hear that customers actually still want that capability, or maybe it's an option, that could be something we definitely look at adding. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to actually walk through each of these tasks that we have. So now we're going to go away from this and actually look at some of the enhancements we made in areas around operations, primarily in financials. So the first thing that we had on our task list, if you caught that really quick, was post vendor invoices, pending vendor invoices. What this is it's saying post all your transactions before the end of the year, right? We want to make sure all of our invoices are in the system, make sure they're all paid. So this is the first place where we're going to come. So everything looks good, right? The one thing that we've introduced with fall release, I had to think there for a second, is a concept of a shared pending vendor invoice form. So previously when you would come in here, you would only see the pending vendor invoices for the legal entity you were active in. We've introduced the ability now to see them across all of the legal entities. So if I click the drop down here in the company and select them all, USMF is looking good, right? Everything's posted. Let's see how the other companies are doing. Not so good. So this gives you the visibility across all of the legal entities to make sure that everything has been posted. Question?
If your task is set up for multiple companies, does it automatically default those companies to that?
That's a good question. If your task is set up for multiple legal entities, does it default automatically? No, it doesn't. You would still have to pick the companies. Yeah. Can you post it from here? Sure. Yes. Yep. You can come in here and post the transactions from here. Also, if you want to even create a new one, if for some reason you have an invoice on your desk, it's the end of the year, should have been entered and posted, you can see here, I think I clicked new. Not sure how good the connection is in here. So you can not only post existing, but you can also add new ones. So right here in the vendor invoice, you can select the company. So not only can you post, you can also enter new invoices from one location now. Okay, let's say, yes, I know, escape out of there. Yes. Oh, am I hitting the wrong? I am. I'm hitting the wrong button. User error, right? All right, so let's go back. So we've completed the task. We're going to mark it as complete. Next process we need to do is depreciation. So also depreciation was enhanced to also be across legal entities. There's a little bit of setup that you can do before this step in the system. I already did it. All you have to do is actually go to the parameters for each of the legal entities that you want to process the depreciation for, and just define two things. All that it is what posting layer do you want to run the depreciation for, and the name of the journal. So I have a couple companies. I did that setup beforehand. And let's say we're going to run this as of the end of the year. So when I click the legal entity dropdown, you can see here it is only going to show me the legal entities that I actually set up or define the parameters for. So that's why I don't see a list of like 20 legal entities here. So let's go ahead. We can say we're going to run it for all of them. You can choose to summarize. That's same as what was there before. Post journals, this is a pretty important one. If you actually want to post all of the depreciation for all three right away, you want to set that to yes. If you don't set this to yes, it's going to create 3 journals in all of your legal entities, and you are going to have to go one by one into each legal entity and post them. So we don't quite have the full scenario covered yet, where you can go to one centralized UI and see the 3 companies to post from there. But once you're confident in your setup and your depreciation, you can just go ahead and post from here. There's a question?
You're setting up the posting layer and the journal name, and then you're selecting legal entities. What if I set up the other legal entities with other posting layers, other journals?
Sure. So
Are they going to pop here or
yeah. So the question is, let's say that in DEMF, which is my German company, in DEMF, I actually set my parameters to be operations for the posting layer and a journal. What will happen when I come in here? Based on the posting layer and the name of the journal, that's the companies that you'll see in the lookup. So I'll process these 3 companies, and then when I come back, I'll just run this again for operations, for the posting journal, and then only DEMF would show in my lookup. So it will filter it based on your parameter settings.
Would you put in a preview then?
Preview. Great question. They don't have it today, but it'd be great to have, yeah. Okay, we're going to cancel that. Let's say that we are completed here. General journal adjustments. Obviously, a lot of people do adjustments at the end of the year, so that's our next step. The one thing I wanted to just point out here is we do have a couple journals where we introduced the concept of a global journal entry. Same concept of what I just showed on the pending vendor invoices. So this is a form where you can come in and see all of the unposted general journals across all of the legal entities that you have access to. So, of course, we're not going to show you companies that you don't have access to their journals. But again, from here, I can post them all from here. I can go in and create new journals based on the legal entity that's relevant. So let's say I'm going to go in and do a new one for USMF. And I'll pick my name. Actually, let's do an intercompany one. I'll show you a couple other little things as we're doing an adjustment. Okay, we'll go to lines. So let's say that this is an intercompany adjustment. Hopefully I remember my accounts correctly. And this is going to go to USSI. And I don't remember my accounts here, so I got to look up. Well, let's just pick petty cash for the fun. Okay, so we have our adjustment in here. A couple things, I'm not going to demo it, but I'll just point out. We have a lot of customer feedback that say, as we're entering in the ledger account, this is what we call the segmented entry control. So let's say that I type in this main account, and I hit enter to go to the next segment, and I type in the cost center. We have a lot of requirements that basically said if the next segment, let's say, which is, I think, department, let's say that the only relevant department based on that main account and that cost center is 022. We actually did add a feature where that dimension value will default for you automatically. So we're looking at your account structure to basically understand, based on the flow of your segments, when we get to a segment value that there is only one relevant option, it will now default automatic, which is a really cool thing for a lot of customers.
Have you also made the general periodic journals?
Have we also done it for the periodic journals? It should work for any journal wherever the segmented entry control exists. Is that what your question is?
What's more that you can make the periodic entries for all companies?
Oh, to make the periodic journals global. No, we have not made those journals global. The only two journals that are global so far is the general journal and the vendor invoice journal. So those are the two journals, and then there's the pending vendor invoice itself, which could come from the purchase order. They're not journals, technically. Not the payment journal. No. We're slowly getting there, right? Okay, so we have our intercompany transaction. Let's go ahead and post this. One other little thing I wanted to point out. Another hugely requested feature with intercompany. Probably a lot of people are going to be like, please say this. If I'm logged into company USMF, they want to have a quick way to go to the voucher in the other destination company. We added that, and I'll show you here as soon as this is done. This connection is very slow. There we go. So if I look at the voucher for the transaction, so this was logged USMF to USSI. I'm in USMF. When I look at the voucher within USMF, a lot of you are familiar with the related voucher button for settlement that we use a lot to show the settlement accounting entries. We're just using that also for intercompany. So you can see here the transactions for USMF. If I go to related vouchers, if there is more than one destination company, you'll see those listed here, and you can pick the appropriate company, and then from here, click on the voucher, and you'll see the voucher for that destination company. So that was also new. Actually, I think that was in 7.0. I believe we added that. Okay, questions? We're good to go? So it's going to go back here to USMF. It's just telling us that it's switching companies because we were looking at the voucher in USSI. So we're good with all of that. Okay, so we have done our adjustments. I threw Intercompany Setup in here because a lot of times companies might have this part of a periodic process where if you're adding new legal entities, you might have to create new relationships to say which companies can transact with each other. But why I really wanted to show this is we completely redesigned this window and made it a global setup. So previously when you defined your intercompany, if USMF could transact with USSI, you had to go into USMF, set up the relationship, log into USSI, set up the relationship. It was a major pain. Now this is all done one place. So regardless of what company you're logged into, you can see all of the setup from within one global form. One other important thing that is important to point out, we do now also differentiate between originating and destination companies. So what this means is, previously, if you had a relationship set up between USMF and DEMF, you could transact starting in either one. So I could start in DEMF and push transactions into USMF or vice versa. A lot of customers are like, no, we don't do that in our organization. Now we support that. So we actually do understand who is the originator of the transaction. So if DEMF can push transactions to USMF, but not vice versa, you create a relationship from DEMF to USMF, but not the reciprocal. And we will prevent the transactions from being originated in USMF. If you do support both, you will have to set up 2 records. So what you can do, actually this one's probably already set up. It is right here. But we do have a create reciprocal button at the top. Let me actually just show you how this works. I'll just delete the one that we have. If you look at the accounts that we have here and you create the reciprocal, all that it's doing is it's just switching them, right? So the accounts that we had that was destination now became originating and vice versa. Okay, questions?
Do you only have one set of accounts that I can enter here, that it's only using one transfer account, or can it be dependent on what I'm posting, which accounts I'm using as transfer accounts?
So the question is really around the do-tos and do-froms. Is there only one set of do-to, do-froms, or is it dependent on like the type of transaction? Is that kind of a good recap?
Yes.
Okay. It's only one set. So basically, regardless of where the intercompany transaction originates from or the document type, these are always going to be the do-tos and do-froms used for the originating company and these for the destination company. Have we had requests to have a separate journal for the do-to, do-from?
Some of the requests that we had from our accounting team is to actually merge the 2 accounts. Intercompany we eliminate at the end anyway, so we
Sure.
want to have a different. We want to have a net intercompany balance on one account, but then we want to do it separated. That's a different journal type, so we can't report off that.
2 different journal types. That's, I think, maybe it's a terminology thing. Yeah, so this journal, this is just basically saying what journal does it get added to. Are you talking more of the posting type?
Yeah, no, let's say that those 2 accounts are debited in the credit account with the same account.
Sure, which is customers can do and do. Yep.
But now, I guess if we had everything in one account, I can't really see what's in the just
Okay, so it's not a journal really that you're looking for. It's something different. Okay, so I think the question really comes down to if my do-to and do-from are the same main account, which we do see a lot of customers setting it up that way because it should always net to 0. Is there a way to understand which entry is the do-to and which entry is the do-from? We don't really have a way to do that today other than through financial dimensions. You might be able to do something with your financial dimensions to track, like who's the originating company, the trading partner. A lot of customers will use that to have a dimension for who the originating company is and then the dimension value for who the destination company is. That would kind of give you a little bit of that.
As well, because the originator could get like the general journal, like payment, something like that, and then it's going to use that for your intercompany.
Yeah, but keep in mind though, we create 2 journals, right? There's one journal in the originating and one in the destination. So if those are different, I mean, you're still going to have that difference of the journal names for the different legal entities. If you're looking at like a reconciliation type report, that might work. Yes. Yep. So that kind of is a similar question. If you do centralized payments versus an intercompany adjustment to the general journal, we all use the same do-tos and do-froms here. We don't use different dependent on the type of transaction that it is. We hear that once in a while as a requirement, not something that we've added yet, of course. Okay. Yeah. The intercompany accounting is available in 7.1 in the fall release. Yep, this is already released. Yes, it's there also. Yep. One other thing, too, I should mention is, just like I showed before, you can send this out to Excel, create all of your relationships in Excel, pump it back in. So that's another really good option for quickly setting up your legal entity combinations. Okay, that task is complete. Process allocations. This is one area where we did not add multi-company, but I do want to just point out a new feature that will be coming in the spring, because this is a highly requested feature that we had, which is the ability to edit your allocations prior to posting them. So if I go ahead and create an allocation request, and by the way, we do want to make this multi-company. We just ran out of time. Let's go ahead and do this as of the end of the year. And we'll do a proposal only so that it actually stops. All right, I think I have everything I need. So what this process does is it actually runs the allocation, and because I told it to stop and not post immediately, it will create a journal entry here for me. Oh, did I put a wrong date? Let me try this again. Utilities should work. Okay, should be okay here. Let's see if it, I don't think I accidentally posted it last time I ran it. Oh, it's actually probably adding it to the bottom, and I just didn't realize it maybe, huh? All right, let's go in and take a look here. Basically what we did, though, and this is not released yet, this is coming in the spring release, is a lot of customers would run this payment proposal and they would want to tweak the results. Pretty common request. So what we did is we did add the ability to edit it. Now keep in mind I am logged in as the administrator. We did tie this functionality to a specific duty or task within security. So what that means is you can actually have like an accountant run the process, but the accounting manager is the only one that can come in and actually make an edit to the results of it. So we did want to make sure that there was security around that to control the ability for who could make edits to the corresponding accounting entries. Once this is actually created, you pretty much can do most of what you can do in another journal, other than it's only ledger because this is GL, so you can't pick a customer or vendor or bank. But you can delete lines, you can modify the amounts, you can delete $0 lines if you actually wanted those created just to see what resulted in $0 for allocations. So you can really do a lot of cleanup in here and then post the results when you're done. Okay, let's go out of here. We're done with that. Currency revaluation. This is a big area that we changed. For those of you that are familiar with AR and AP revaluation, anyone familiar with that? We had a lot of requests for a couple of things. Number one, make it like AR and AP. So what that means is in AR and AP, when you run the revaluation, you actually see a record in here of each time you run the process. We added that. That's what you're seeing here. I haven't run it yet, so there's nothing here. Number two, I want a simulation. We added that. So you'll also see that. Along with that, though, we made a lot of other enhancements. So let's go ahead and actually run through this. And let's say we're going to revalue for the end of my year. So a couple things. We added a date of rate. So if for some reason you want to use an exchange rate on a different date other than the to date, you can define that. We do have a few customers that had that request. I'm just going to use the same. And actually, now that I think about it, I might have forgot to put different exchange rates in. We'll see. The main accounts to revalue. So previously, I don't know if anyone remembers this, we used to have two check boxes, one that said balance sheet, one that said P&L. And you had to actually mark one of them or nothing happened, which was not very user-friendly. So what we did is we changed this to a drop-down. Now, where this becomes important is one of the next features that we added was the ability to define on the main account the exchange rate type that will be used for doing the revaluation. So it's very common that you will want to revalue your fixed assets using a different exchange rate type from your expenses. So on the main account itself, let me just jump over there quick. We added a field for that specific purpose. So if we look here, right over here, I'll just go into edit mode to make this a little easier to see. We now have the exchange rate type. We still also have the exchange rate type down here, actually further down, that's the legal entity override, for reporting. So for management reporter, they still also have theirs. They are separate fields, so just make sure you keep that in mind when you're setting them. So the one down at the bottom is used for financial reporting. This one at the top, of course, is still dependent on whether you revalue the account, yes or no. And then if you say yes, you can define the exchange rate type. Now you can see here mine is blank. And if it's blank, it'll default back to using the exchange rate type that's set up on the ledger. So we still have that secondary default. But this will give you a lot of flexibility. And because we now have this, we really feel that a lot of customers will actually run the revaluation for all of their accounts. Because before, what they'd have to do is they'd have to pick like balance sheet, then do a small range, go to the ledger, change the exchange rate type, run it quick. And this had to be when everyone was off the system, because the exchange rate type is also used for transaction entry. That problem goes away. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Okay, and you know what? I'm actually going to quick add an exchange rate because I think I forgot, clicked the wrong one. I forgot to put in a new rate. So let's quick do this for, let's see here, US to Euro, I think is what we want. There we go. Okay. So we'll say this is 75 now. Okay. So if we go back, run our revaluation. Okay, for 12.1. So we're going to choose for all of our accounts. Next thing, multi-company. We also made this multi-company, which was a really big enhancement. So you can revalue across all of your legal entities at one time. And again, it's going to adhere to the exchange rate type for each of the main accounts. And there is also a legal entity override. So if you do have different exchange rate types that need to be used for European countries versus U.S. companies, you can define those different at a legal entity level. So let's go ahead and pick all of them. One other huge enhancement we made is before, when you had to pick the currencies that you were revaluing, there was a range, which was just dumb. It's like, how often are you going to revalue alphabetically a range of currencies? So now what we've done is we've actually given you a multi-select dropdown. What you're seeing here is only the currencies that actually exist on transactions in the date range that I've selected to run the revaluation for. So if I'm running this for all companies, let's say one of them is a U.S. company. Of course, the U.S. company, even though U.S. dollar is selected here, it's not going to revalue anything. It'll just ignore it. But we show all of them because multiple companies could have multiple accounting currencies. All right, so we'll go ahead and pick all of those. Here's the big one, preview before posting. Set that to yes. You might be wondering what happened to the main account range. We actually did move that to sysquery, so you could actually do a non-sequential range if for some reason you still need to do that. We're really hoping you don't have to, though, with the exchange rate type addition. All right, let's run this. The simulation in GL, I think, is better than AR and AP. It's not a report. It actually will show you the results on the screen. And if you're happy with them, you can post right from there. So we're really trying to shorten the process again. So in AR and AP, you run a report, but you have to run the whole process again, which takes potentially a lot of time. So what we've done is we've cut this into multiple stages. We have the processing stage, and of course I have no data. Must have picked the wrong date, sorry. You would see in here a list of every legal entity that I must not have had a right exchange rate in there for the currency combinations. But you would see each of them listed here for all of the legal entities, a separate entry for each account, for each legal entity, for each posting layer even. So what you can do is if you're happy with the results, and it's not showing the window because there was nothing revalued, at the bottom of the window you can post all of them, or you can say only post a subset of the legal entities. So if I ran it for all, and I only liked the results for USMF, I could say only post USMF. Go and fix whatever the problem is with the other companies and rerun it for the other companies. Question on that?
Yeah, just to be sure, it's not, you're not done any changes to the AR and AP.
No, we are not doing anything with AR and AP revaluation. This is just general ledger. Yep. Yes, I know. We've talked to the PMs over there. We're like, you really should do this. Yep. Yeah, so one other thing I was going to mention, and again, if I'm frustrated, I probably picked the wrong date. I don't have time to really go back. But in that preview window, you can send everything to Excel. So it's not an official report. We kind of debated between Excel versus PDF. We decided to just do Excel. A lot of customer research that we did, most people were happy with that. So you can send it to Excel, so you at least have your audit trail, your documentation of what actually happened. And the Excel spreadsheet is actually, and the form is actually really nice. It'll show you, like I was saying, the legal entities, all the accounts, what the old revaluation was, what the new revaluation is, what the exchange rate type is that's being used, what the exchange rate itself is that's being used. So you have all of that information in the preview and in the report. Question?
Exchange rate adjustment, if I have a bank account in foreign currency, is it also visible in the subledger now? Because up
Yeah.
to now, it was a discrepancy.
Yeah, that's a great question. What about revaluation in the subledger for bank? We still do not have that. Yeah, I know. And again, it's actually on the pretty short list for feature enhancements for the cash management team. I do know that. We don't have it yet. Yes, unfortunately. Okay, one last thing. Question in the back? Yeah, so that's a great point. We started to hear this at the end. So the question or comment was, this is great. One step further that we would really like to do is actually to be able to define the unrealized gain or loss accounts on the main account itself. We started to get that feedback after we had already finished. It's definitely something we want to look at doing, yes. Yep. Okay, one last thing, and we got to keep going. We're getting short on time. I just want to point out also you can reverse from here. So if you aren't happy with the results and you did post, you can choose to reverse the results. And it will actually have a record of the original entry, and then it will create a separate record for the reversal of that. So you have the full audit trail of every time you ran it and every time it was reversed. All right, let's keep going so we're not... Question while I go here? Yes, the revaluation enhancements are available in 7.1. Yep, so in the fall release. Okay, stop period. This is one that was available in 7.0. So again, on that theme of multi-company, we actually enhanced the ledger period where you can come in and put a period, let's say period number 1 on hold across all of your legal entities. So let's say we're at the end of the year. And we're going to go down here to period 12, and we'll mark all of these. And we're going to say update period status to on hold. We'll go ahead and mark that. And you can see what will happen is all of them for all of the legal entities that I selected automatically were changed to on hold. One little thing I'm just going to point out, because we got a lot of people that didn't like this. We got a pick here. I just want to point out that we did change closed to permanently closed. So people know. You cannot reopen that. A lot of people were really confused with that. We'd like it to eventually have some kind of process where you could potentially reopen, but that's there's a lot more to that. So, all right, so we're going to go out of here. Question while I go? Can you close by the layers? No, you can't. So it's the same as what it was before. You can close by the modules. You can have certain users that still have access, or the overall period, but not at the layer level. Good enhancement. Okay, we did that. Detailed trial balance. There's not too much here, but I just wanted to point out a few things. So we used to have a lot of the parameters that you use to run the trial balance up under parameters at the top. A lot of people, including myself, when I took over GL, were like, where's the date? So we added a lot of those parameters down, actually on the page itself. Another big thing you might notice is when you come in here, we no longer automatically populate the trial balance. And the reason we don't do that is because a lot of people are like, that's not the period I wanted. I actually want a different period, and now I'm wasting my time waiting for these balances to update, and then I have to go and pick a different period. So we don't populate anymore. We let you go ahead and pick the date. Okay. Does it remember the last date? It always defaults to the current period, basically based on your system date. It doesn't remember the last date.
It was better before it populated automatically with the last setup that I had.
Well, I don't think it populated with the last date you had. It always populates with the system date.
In 2012, it did populate with my last settings.
Okay, I'll have to look at that. It might have been a change that was made on 7.0 based on customer feedback. It's kind of one of those, you're going to get half customers that want it current. And
It was the last date
Okay.
I put in.
Okay.
And of course, during a month end or a year end, I always look at the same date.
Sure. Yep, that makes sense. So just when it's run, these parameters do shrink up so you have more UI, so you can see more of what you've done. One other little thing just to kind of mention is we still do have the column options. Some of the column options used to be down here. Now we move those up here because those are things you typically set and don't ever change. So if you wanted to see like your segments in separate columns, all of those options are still here. They're just moved up to the top. Okay, let's keep going. We're getting close. We got about 15 minutes left. Year-end close. Another process that we made multi-company. So now when you actually come into the year-end close, you can see it looks a little different. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a template. So let's say that I want to close all of my U.S. companies at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, and I'm going to base it off of this calendar. And now when I go down here to add, we have either selecting either by the legal entity or by an organizational hierarchy. So if you do have an org hierarchy with them selected, so I'm going to just pick legal entity. So you can see here, this is only going to show the legal entities that use the calendar that I selected up above. Okay, we'll just mark a few. My U.S. companies, we'll add those. So you can see here, and just like before, when they get added, we still have to define the retained earnings for each of the companies. One other little thing that we added, which a lot of people really found nice, is we actually will now track the date you last ran the year-end close. That was something we actually didn't show before. So a lot of customers would be like, did I run this? Let me go see if I have beginning balances. Oh, I don't. Okay, got to run it. But the setup is still really the same. So you define your retained earnings, you define the financial dimensions that are relevant for the balance sheet or your profit and loss accounts. So this is the template aspect of it. This is just saved. You can reuse it year after year. So once I've got that defined.
What about the parameter? You use the parameters to make sure that you did not have it set to close.
Say that again.
Parameters where you normally don't want it to close the period, you put it on hold.
Yep.
So when you ran the opening balance, what I call the roll forward, you did not want to close because you can't reverse it. Is this the opening balances from Act 2012?
So let's keep going. I think maybe we're not far enough yet to answer your question. Okay, so this is just a setup, right? Now we're actually going to run the process. So that's at the top. We're going to run the fiscal close. So it's going to show me just the companies in the template that I've selected. I want to point out you can select a subset of these. And the reason is, what we hear, of course, from a lot of customers is they say, well, I first run this year-end close for all companies because I want beginning balances. Then I go and I do my adjustments. And I might not make adjustments necessarily in every company, and maybe not at the same time. So you might come in and run it for all to begin with. And then a week later, when your adjustments are done, you might come in and say, I'm only going to run it for USMF. So that's why we let you select a subset from here. So we're going to go ahead and say all, click OK. And now here are the actual parameters. So we now pick the date that you're running the year-end close for, or the year, I should say. We don't pick the date anymore. That was kind of confusing for customers because you could pick January 1st. What's going to happen? Voucher. Again, you can. This is all still the same. You know, if you require a voucher or not, that's defined in your parameters. So very similar to what we had before. We just really tried to simplify through better labels what is happening. Previously, we used to have a drop-down, and it said something like, I can't remember anymore what it said. It was very unclear. One option was actually saying run the year-end close. The other one was saying reverse the year-end close that I just did. We got rid of that, and we just changed it to undo previous close. So this is your reverse. So if I had run this previously, I forgot some adjustments maybe that I wanted to include, I can reverse it, rerun it again. Okay, and then from here you just click OK. This actually runs in the background. It's set to batch processing. So we do try to make sure you can get in, start this, keep going with the rest of your day. Of course, if you do adjustments after, you can still run the year-end close again, and it will still bring just the adjustments over, or reverse everything that was there and then bring them all over. There's different parameters for that. But the year-end close still works the same as what it did before. It's just now you can run it for multiple years.
Just a quick one. When
Sure.
you reverse, it actually deletes. Is that correct?
No, when you there's different ways to do it. There is a parameter that basically deletes. If that parameter is marked, it deletes and it completes a whole new set of entries. That is different than the undo. The undo, I believe, actually creates a whole new journal entry to reverse it out. Yep, so there are two different ways to do it. They work slightly different, and a lot of it was because different countries have different legal requirements.
Now, all these global journals and all this, and now this with the European so on.
Yes.
Have you made new purposes in the organizational hierarchies that we need to be aware for the company?
Yep. So the question is, have we added new purposes in the organizational hierarchies to support some of these new features? We have not, no. But the organizational hierarchy is actually something we are looking at investing in potentially in the next release to make it work a little bit better with Management Reporter. So those are things we are going to be looking at pretty soon, yes. Question?
Financial dimensions, where you choose that you can incorporate the financial dimensions in balance or not, or can you choose which dimensions?
So the question is around the financial dimensions. Can you choose which dimensions? Let me just scroll down here so you can see this a little bit better.
As far as I remember, you could for
Yeah,
can you for balance?
Yeah, we don't have it for balance sheet. Honestly, I've never had any customer request it for balance sheet.
I think you will, because we can add any dimension that we want to. And a very popular one is, for example, intercompany, intercompany loans,
Sure.
etc. That's balance.
Sure. So you don't want that.
Yeah.
It's a great example. Thank you. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. I wish I had a piece of candy. Oh, there's one right there. Grab one on your way out. No, that's actually a really good example. Okay, I'm sorry. We got to rush here. We've got about 5 minutes left. I just want to show a couple things. Last one is financial statements. So I am going to show a few new things that are coming. Let me just pull this over. For some of you that are familiar with Management Reporter or the Designer, we did have the folders that you could create with your report definitions. We didn't show those folders. We are showing those folders now. That's actually what you're seeing here. We now just switched this to a tree view. So if you have a folder and your report definitions under those folders, we will now show that. So here's the default reports that we have out of the box showing under the folder. One other really big thing, and this is coming in the spring release, so you don't have it yet. One other thing coming in the spring release is a true generate from within here. A lot of people don't really realize a little bit of the limitations that we have with financial reporting right now. Let's say, for example, that I have this report here, and I viewed it, and the view actually, the first time, actually is a generate. But then let's say that my accounting manager went and changed my tree on the report definition in the report designer. The user in operations will not see that new reporting tree until someone goes and generates it within the report designer. This generate button will now do that for you. So this is a really big thing. I'm very happy with this. So basically from here, we still have a lot of the same functionality. A few things to point out: export. We did add now the options when you export to Excel to say what level you want to export. We were finding some customers were exporting their transaction detail, and it was millions of records, and it was bringing the system to its knees. So now you can actually choose what level you want to export. We will never default transaction to yes, ever. You have to choose to export transaction, and we will warn you even when you do that. Are you really sure you want to do this? Because it is a lot of data. And sometimes it's relevant, right? If you really have a smaller subset of accounts on your financial statement, you might want to just export just because it's a small number of accounts. And that's okay, so that's why we still support it. Did we add comments? That's a good question. So do we have comments yet? No, we don't yet. So just kind of a general, I guess, statement around financial reporting. If you think about what we've done, we really got rid of what used to be called the desktop viewer and the web viewer, right? This is our viewer now, operations. So we're adding functionality. We are missing functionality because we got rid of that. So we're having to completely rewrite this. So some things we don't have yet. Comments is one of them. It's definitely on our short list. Being able to import from Excel, that's on our short list. So if you have data, company data in an Excel spreadsheet, we don't have that ability to read it yet. Yeah, some people are like, really? Really? Sending it to a SharePoint site or publishing it somewhere, we don't have that yet. Key thing here is yet. We are pumping a lot of resources and time into adding those things. So it will be coming.
So a lot of the functionality of Management Reporter, some tools and all, as you build this, some of those functionalities going to be added.
Yes. So everything is going to get pushed into operations. So we're going to add a lot of enhancements here, comments, where you want to publish things. Yeah, so let me talk about the roadmap when I get to the last little slides here. I just want to show one other last thing. I'm sorry to cut short. We got 2 minutes. I did want to just jump over here to the CFO workspace, just to quickly show this. This is coming in the spring. We're going to have a new workspace specifically designed for the CFO. And some of you have hopefully been in some of Melinda and TJ's sessions. A lot of this embedded analytics will just be there out of the box. Of course, the thought is you can always go to the PBIX and change what you want, and as long as those resources are added into the AOT, I believe it should just automatically show those changes. So you can see here some of the things that we did as we're showing a combination of general ledger, bank information, AP and AR information, because really the CFO kind of sees a wide view. So you can see here we have net income, revenue, expenses, current ratio, gross margin. Here's expenses by categories, revenue by region. Here's the cash flow forecast. That's also another big feature coming in the spring. And then if you want to see a little bit more detail in each of the areas that you can see at the bottom, I don't know if you can see these or not, there's tabs. So I can go to finance and see even more KPIs, sales. And I'm sorry, some of this data is not the best in this company, but so here's some of the things around credit and collections, around the sales by revenue, or the top 10 revenue items, customers, top 10 by revenue. So we're really trying to pull a lot of this data together into this CFO workspace. Question in the back.
This is, it's going to be, basically the same layout of data that's being presented on the tab. These aren't widgets that you can necessarily go say, oh, I want the map, or I don't care about the map, but I really want it different.
Sure. Go into so the question is, what if I don't want the map? Don't care about it. Or what if I wanted to show the map by customers that are overdue, not by revenue? You can go into the PBIX, into the Power BI content pack, make the changes. Oh, yeah, my battery's running low. And those changes should be published because, again, I believe there might be a little bit of dev work behind it. I know you have to add the resources behind the workspace. But from what I saw, it's pretty easy to do. Yep. And, I mean, that's the key thing, too. You might not like what I put on the Overview tab. Switch it out to what you want. Things like that. Also important things to point out here, filters. So you can filter. We have filtering by the legal entity. We also added filtering for financial dimensions, which is a huge request that we've had. So that will also be there and available with the spring release. Okay, we're a minute past due. Let me just jump back to the slides. We're through everything. Just a couple things I wanted to point out. If you want a little bit more information, we do have some more sessions. Hopefully it's coming up here. We have a financial Ask the Experts tomorrow morning. Financial reporting made easy. So we're going to just do kind of a high-level overview of the financial reporting or management reporter, what we have today. We'll actually talk a little bit about the roadmap in that session about where we're going. And then we're going to do a separate session on consolidation. Here's my contact. So hopefully you guys should all have that. Please take your surveys. The one thing, did I not have it in here? I thought I had it in here. Sorry, I thought I had a slide for it. Is everyone familiar with the roadmap site? I know there was a question on that. Roadmap.dynamics.com, I think is what it is. That will show you all of the features that we are currently working on. So if you have a question on, is this coming, we don't go too far out in the future, but you can actually see, oh, we are actually working on that right now. Like the generate button that I showed, that is on that roadmap site. You can see it. A couple other big things with financial reporting is we are moving away from the data mart, and we are going to be using the entity store. That will come probably June or July timeframe. So the data mart will be deceased before too long. So that's another really big change that financial reporting is making. Another one I'll kind of give a way big preview is even the report designer, which is right now a click once experience. That will also be going away, and we will be moving a lot of the design experience into operations. So that's kind of the really long roadmap, but we are investing a lot, like I said, to fill those gaps. Okay, thank you. I know I was rushing at the end, but if there's more questions, feel free to ask.